Ladies and gentlemen, and this is what if the Tyranids reach Terra? Warhammer 40k lore by major kill. What if the Tyranids reach Terra? Obviously, custodians would go ape shit, right? I mean, I don't know much about defense, like what type of defense is there right now in 40k about Terra? Because last Terra is like, nowadays Terra is nothing, only place for Emperor, so they protect it that way. So as far as I remember that, so I don't know what type of defense would be there, but I'm guessing Terra would be lost, right? Because the whole thing of Terra, Tyranid attack is that they disable any type of travel, in warp travel or whatever, right? So they will be left with, I guess, some space marines and custodians, right? And how many custodians are there? If obviously all custodians would have been at the Terra, I don't know if they are right now, right? Because after Gilliman's return, they are actually with Gilliman, right? So before it would be different. Right now, there won't be that many custodians there, as I think. So if the custodians were all there, there would be different scenarios. Like they would definitely crush all the Tyranids. Doesn't matter how big the horde is. I guess all the custodians would be too overpowering. But nowadays, I don't know. Nowadays, with the new update, I don't know. So yeah, this is gonna be interesting. I guess it's just gonna be all hypotheticals, right? I don't think this will be based on any kind of lore because there's no lore about it. I guess he's just gonna guess based on what type of defense is there, what type of custodians are there, and what would be look like. I guess. So yeah, it would be interesting. Yeah, I like Major Kill and his videos because first of all they are fun. I guess it's one of the topics he tackles is like one of those type of topics like people are sitting, oh, I wonder what if this happens, and then the proper lore that he touched also are in like short, like 10-15 minute videos, which is kind of interesting as well because every other channel is just like hour plus long and things like that. So yeah, let's watch this one.
Guys and gal, although the Tyranids just seem like a minor pest on the galactic stage since they pretty much never win, and when they do, it doesn't actually affect anything, they are theoretically the galaxy's greatest threat. More dangerous than Chaos, the Orcs, Necrons, and the Tau combined. That is because there is a theory that GW loves encouraging that the current Tyranid hive fleets are just the tip of the foreskin compared to the rest of the shaft that the Tyranids have in reserve. Vanguard fleets, scout forces. If this is true, then yeah, rip Warhammer 40k, but until it's actually proven, as of right now, the Tyranid forces we see are the Tyranid...
Proven, like it's GW's word. They say this is the case, then it's the case. It's probably gonna happen in the future. I guess the lore will probably progress at a point like they'll destroy whatever force there is, so they don't send any signal for the main force to come to the galaxy or something, and the threat was averted. Because actually, if threat comes here, it's just going to be overwhelming. How are they going to go from there, right? There are already too much threats there with chaos and everything. Now the whole Tyranid force, that would be too much.
Forces in play. But that begs the question, could the Tyranids in their current form invade the Sol system and consume Terra? What would happen if they tried? Could they even get past the outer defenses? It's an interesting question and worth talking about. Before we get started, I'm happy to announce the latest major mini, the Xenonid Winged Parasite. The Xenonids have been a top-selling range in the major minis, so I thought let's add a unique, interesting new unit to spice up your existing Xenonid armies, start a new one, or even use it as a unique unit for your official Spacebug forces. This model is especially well crafted, complicated but not difficult to paint, since it's been broken into easy to put together parts. It also comes with some nice, definitely not dangerous eggs as its base prop. Alongside this new model, the Xenonid range also includes raptors, warriors, and a tyrant queen, all of which can be bought in a value bundle. If this isn't your style, the major mini range is stacked with dozens of other models, including the Space Elf Avenger Lord, the Shark Daddy, the Orc Demon Killer, as well as the Shadow Warden, amongst many, many more. With only $10 worldwide shipping, it's worth checking out. Link is below. Today we'll go over what would happen if the Tyranids decided to try consume Terra. This will be a realistic lore-friendly what if, not just a every Tyranid versus every Space Marine kind of vibe. Let's get into it. The strategic advantage of wiping out Terra would be huge for the Tyranids. Without the Astronomicon, the Imperium cannot travel the warp very well. However, the Tyranids don't need the Astronomicon, so it wouldn't affect them. This would effectively make each Imperial world isolated and vulnerable, allowing the Nids to consume the lightly defended worlds first, and then build up enough biomass to take on the bigger, more fortified worlds, like Macragge. However, Terra is also the most defended world in the entire galaxy. It's even more defended now than it was during the Siege of Terra, with all kinds of fucked up shit protected protecting it, as well as the fact that getting there is also a big issue, with numerous worlds in the way as well as fleets that would try to engage and skirmish with the Tyranids. But just because it isn't easy...
So it is the most defended one, but I guess he was talking about that it's not much of importance apart from the Emperor. It's not much there. Somebody I remember either him or Lutin talking about that. Like, there's not much on Terra apart from just Emperor's throne. That's it. That's why it's more important.
Easy doesn't mean the Nids can't do it. First up, the Nids would need to gather their strength. They wouldn't use all their hive fleets in case they were defeated. The hive mind knows the risk and knows that if it committed its entire strength and was killed, then the Tyranids would be effectively wiped out from the setting until more hive fleets arrived. The Nids would begin merging various hive fleets into a mega fleet, with Leviathan being its core. However, the splinters of Behemoth and Kraken would also converge. This mustering would likely take place somewhere on Imperium Nihilus, so the Imperium would struggle to detect the build-up of power, whilst also providing the Nids with numerous vulnerable worlds to collect biomass on. Many of the minor hive fleets would also converge here, including Chimera, Grendel, Harbinger, Proteus, which was already actually heading to Terra, Jormungandr, Dagon, and more. Some would not be called up, such as Kronos, who was designed to combat chaos, but many others would. This huge gathering of hive fleets would result in a lot of sharing of DNA that has been captured across the galaxy, upgrading existing combat forms and inventing entirely new ones that would be designed to combat Imperial forces. The hive mind would want to travel to Terra as fast as possible in an attempt to take the throne world by surprise and prevent it from being overly prepared. Using their...
Isn't the Tyranid's whole thing though to cut off communication and cut off access to war? Wouldn't that make backup coming really hard, like really impossible?
Narval bioships, the Tyranids would be able to create a large gravity wormhole sci-fi thingo that I don't really understand super well to bend space and travel faster than light towards Terra, bypassing the Great Rift. Despite their attempt at being incognito, such a big build-up of Tyranids as well as them beginning their transportation towards Terra would be detected and Terra alerted. There's also a good chance that the Emperor would see this coming and give his custodians visions via their dreams to prepare for war against the hive mind, or dragon as it's often called. Eldrad would also receive visions and communicate them to Guilliman to return to the throne world. Tyranid travel is slow but very
I like the whole element of what if this actually one day does happen? What if this is the time where Emperor decides to return or something, right? And you could create this whole scenario of sudden return type of like Marvel level shit, like Marvel movies have it. Like all the shit happen, Tyranids attack and everything, and the last one, doom music plays and Emperor's back. There'll be some badass entry.
Reliable. It would probably take them a decade or more to reach Terra, giving the Imperium time to withdraw Guilliman to Terra and also probably the Lion. All custodians would also be returned to Terra alongside hundreds of thousands of space marines and countless guardsmen. The Sol System's planets would also begin fortifying themselves, with Mars being a standout. The Phalanx, the Rock, as well as thousands of other warships would be prepared. The Shadow Keepers would also unlock and deploy various Dark Age of technology weaponry from the Dark Cells, whilst other forbidden tech, such as the Psi Titans of the Ordo Sinister, would also once again be reactivated. The Tyranid fleet would contain hundreds of thousands of ships, or even millions, with trillions or more individual warriors. It would also contain thousands of super Tyranid units, like Bio-Titans. With such a large fleet, the Tyranid Shadow and the Warp ability, a warp disorientating effect they have, would clash with the full might of the Astronomicon. It's unclear which would prevail. Is the Emperor's psychic might enough to keep Terra shining in the warp, thus allowing for reinforcements to keep arriving, or would it smother it, making Terra undiscoverable until it was too late, or until it had fought off the Nids itself? Let's say the Astronomicon holds the Shadow at bay from nullifying...
I think all the accounts we've heard of so far, Emperor doing with his just psychic abilities, feels like he would be strong enough for that.
The Imperial Psyche elements, but it also smothers the Sol System in his shadow, making the Astronomicon disappear from sight for now. The space battle would be insane, and despite the Nids' huge numbers advantage, their chances of taking on the largest fleet ever assembled is pretty small. Guilliman, the Lion, Trajan Valoris, the greatest tactical minds in the galaxy, would be too much for the Nids, combined with the obscene firepower from their super ships, like the Rock and the Phalanx. Not to mention Terra's...
Yeah, but would they be able to come to Terra for help? That's the thing. Would they be all able to gather at the, just right amount of time?
orbital plates and surface-to-space weapons, as well as Mechanicus elements. No, the Nids would want to land on Terra as soon as possible. They would begin by splitting their mega fleet into hundreds of smaller swarm fleets. Each swarm would blockade and siege the other planets in the Sol system, divide and conquer style, whilst the main swarms would attempt to get around the Imperial fleet and begin dropping units and spores on Terra as soon as possible. Many Tyranids would die, especially the bioships that engaged the main Imperial fleet in order to tie it down long enough for the rest.
I think it's their motto by now. Many Tyranids would die. That's what happens every time they're there. Like, regardless of which force it is usually, whether it's Orcs or, Imperium, they can pretty much one of them can kill 3 or 4 of them. But their whole thing is they're way too large in number, and that's how it win. So I guess number won't be an issue for them.
To the swarms to get through. Inevitably, the Tyranids would get through after suffering massive casualties. However, with how massive their army is, they wouldn't really mind. The Nids would begin dropping their forces in populated but mostly undefended areas on Terra, their spores disgorging countless warriors to spread out and wipe out local defenders, take down surface-to-air weaponry to then allow greater amounts of higher tier Tyranids to be sent down. For each spore that landed, another would get shot out of the sky, with Tyranid casualties already in the billions. However, with Terra's insane population of quadrillions of people, the Nids would quickly begin consuming and harvesting its people's biomass, bringing them to digestion pools and allowing them to create warriors on Terra's surface. The Nids don't have time for a protracted siege though. In space, more and more of their ships are dying. Some of their swarms are able to take out the weaker planets in the Sol system, however others like Mars are able to annihilate the invading Nids, whilst others like Titan are also able to hold out. With trillions of Nids landing on Terra, they would begin to bum rush the Imperial Palace, encountering much heavier resistance in the form of kill zones, space marines, Titans, custodians, and mass groups of guardsmen. The Nids casualties would pile up more and more. However, with Bio-Titan support as well as the elite Tyranid forms, they would slowly and steadily begin to gain ground, all the while raining down spores around the palace itself. They can't just drop them straight on as the palace is shielded and has a shitload of guns, but before long the Imperial Palace is surrounded by trillions of frenzied Nids. The amount of Nid corpses would create literal siege towers that other Nids...
Yeah, to me it feels like every time Tyranids attack, they are like more like a attacking animal type of way. Would they be conniving and I guess strategically strong like that they would basically do the way he's saying, like just swarm the palace as fast as they can? What type of mentality would they would just attack in large numbers, just trying to consume everything they can? This is where I'm getting confused. Like, are they that kind of conniving strategic?
Nids would climb up, whilst their blood would begin to flow across the world, flooding low-lying areas. The Lion and Gilliman would be defending the palace personally alongside Trajan. They would have to be careful though. Even with their immense physical prowess, it would be their command skills that are valuable here, not their swordplay. Having a sick power sword or a 12-inch cock doesn't do much against a literal tide of 1,000,000 Tyranids sweeping you up. Hence, the Imperial heroes would more so be tasked with commanding different key areas and then taking out elite Tyranids that are able to get ahead of the swarm in order to try soften the defenses to allow the swarm to push up. Stuff like lictors, winged hive tyrants, trigons, or other chunky boys that can fly or burrow underground. There would also be numerous new Tyranid forms, including the Norn emissary, who would be constantly attempting to assassinate key Imperial heroes, such as chapter masters or the Primarchs themselves. So you bet your ass that our heroes would be busy as fuck. However, overall, this wouldn't end up killing many key characters in my opinion, as each commander would have a personal elite custodian bodyguard. The Tyranid push would look something like this. The swarm would encounter heavy resistance and begin to falter as it suffers huge casualties. Various lictors, trigons, gargoyles...
To me it feels like any Tyranids, right? Even the most badass Tyranids, taking out custodian kind of feels weird. I'm guessing the baddest of the baddest Tyranids could be a good force against custodians, but I don't know. I don't see any custodian falling to any kind of Tyranids.
And other infiltration Nids would then attempt to swarm the defenders' backline positions. The defenders would fight them off and kill them, but the destruction and damage done would be enough to allow the swarm to push through and force the defenders to withdraw to another defensible position. Thus, the Tyranids would slowly gain ground. It would be a very costly tactic, but the Tyranids need to be fast and they have a lot of warriors to spare. This is where a number of things would occur. Either the Tyranids would eventually run out of gas from the Imperial onslaught, or the Imperials would win the space battle and begin orbitally bombing the Nid ground ground forces into oblivion, or the defenders' final defense point, probably in a hectic choke point within the palace itself, would be too strong for the Nids to push through, or maybe the Nids finally do push through and get enough warriors past to reach the Golden Throne. However, the Emperor isn't some bitch. With the opening of the Great Rift, he has actually managed to regain a level of consciousness and awareness, and you bet your ass he would be jizzing out holy fire to burn some bugs. No, the only way would be for the Tyranids to get the Swarm Lord, as well as hundreds or even thousands of Neurolictors, Zoanthropes, and Neurothropes to surround the Golden Throne, which would mean that the Tyranids would have already had to achieve total victory or something close to it to set it up. But I really just don't see that happening. The devastation of Baal was around 30,000 Blood Angels and a few million human soldiers on a solidly defended but not fortress world versus High Fleet Leviathan, the largest Tyranid hive in the setting at the time. Sure, the Blood Angels only survived due to the arrival of Kabunda and Gilliman, but they did most of the work themselves. Yes, the Tyranid force attacking Terra would be many times the size of Leviathan, however the defenses on Terra are infinitely better than those on Baal, not to mention the thousands of Custodies, 2 Primarchs, hundreds of thousands of Space Marines, trillions of Guardsmen, as well as all the other fucked up forbidden shit that would get deployed. Even if the Tyranids had an infinite number of warrior forms, they probably wouldn't be able to breach the palace before the Imperial fleet took out the Nid ships. The Nid's best warrior forms, like the Swarm Lord or Norn Emissary, still don't hold a candle compared to the Primarchs, and with Mars being next to Terra, you bet your ass the might of the Mechanicus would be on full bug swatting display. There's also a decent chance that the Silent King and Eldar would intervene, assisting the Imperials by wiping out thousands of Nid ships. After all, the Silent King sees the...
Can you imagine that? Like Silent King literally walking his ass onto Terra, knowing that's the Emperor knowing that shit, and actually fighting Tyranids. Like, what is happening? What the fuck is happening right now? I'm literally on Terra trying to help this Imperium. There's just few kilometers, few miles there. It's just Emperor sitting there. That would be some ridiculous sight. But yeah, I think that would happen, right? Right now, Tyranid's whole, Necron's whole focus is on Tyranids, so yeah, that would definitely happen. But I believe that's the case as well. I think Tyranids are not really cunning and strategic as the Imperium would be. Obviously, Imperium being proper military strategist type of thing, right? With the Primarchs, Custodians, right? Everyone is just like, you can find a great strategist here and there, great war masters, whatever here and there, somewhat. And as the video said, like, Lion is better war master than Horus himself. But there's a reason why Emperor didn't choose him. So if the Lion is there, like, that's the game over, right? And the whole setting is just there. Gilliman Lion fighting the Tyranids, right? So I think if Terra is defended the way he says defended, there's no way in hell the current Tyranid force can do anything about it. Obviously, that's why they have to tease like this massive, grander main force still not here. It's coming to even the scale out, because otherwise Imperium is just way too powerful for Tyranids right now.
Nids is the galaxy's greatest threat and wants sentient life to continue, whilst the Elder know that the Imperium is their bulwark against their own extinction. So I'd expect a few craft worlds and a fuck-off huge Necron fleet to also get involved, especially since both factions can bypass the Shadow and the Warp. Overall, it would be shit for the Imperium, with Terra getting devastated and a number of Sol System worlds getting consumed. But the Nids would lose so much biomass that it would take them centuries to recover if they ever did. So it's not so much could they reach Terra, it's why they would want to, given their chances of victory are so tiny. There's also every chance that they wouldn't even be able to land a single warrior on Terra due to the system's defenses. When Khorne unleashed his legions on Terra, catching the Imperium by surprise while the Emperor was knocked out from the opening of the Great Rift, they were defeated despite Terra having no time to prepare and Khorne being turbocharged. A prepared Sol system is not something to fuck with, and the hive mind knows this. Just look at what happened to Horus. If you enjoyed the video and you want to support the channel, then pick up...
I think the Custodians are, regardless of what, Custodians are kind of heart of all this. Custodians just being there, defending Terra, it's just like too powerful. Custodians are that level of OP. That's the thing, like Custodians would be the X factor. They are the thing that gives Terra that level of power, proper power. Even though there is every other defense is there, like he said, like all the soldiers, all the space marines and things, Primarchs also, like Gilliman and Lion, sure. But I think Custodians are the one that kind of gives it backbone. At a level that would be too much, right? And yeah, I think Tyranids at this form can do shit, right? I guess it depends. Like, what if they get catch off guard and Lion and Gilliman is just can't make it there? And a lot of Custodians are with the Gilliman or something with its crusade, right? So, and Terra is really off guard. I guess at that point it would be a question of what would happen now. But I feel like the whole thing of Tyranids and the coming force is that right now Tyranids is nothing in front of Imperium. But yeah. Like imagine that if Silent King and Necrons actually help out and save Imperium at times like this. What happens to all like Xenos are our enemy? Anything Xenos is heresy. How would they gonna sell it if everybody knows that the Xenos literally saved Imperium? Like how are they gonna sell that to their citizen? That would be some weird shit. But yeah. Alright, well that was What If the Tyranids Reach Terra by channel Major Kill. If you like my reaction, don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.